Here are the answers for January 2016 Foundation Tier Paper 1. Oops. Furthest from Cairo, Jakarta, and so you can see the answers here. This was pretty well done, this page. How far has he travelled if he goes from London to Cairo and then Cairo to Singapore? So you've got to add those together. There are a few slips in part E. 7/10 of that is shaded. Use your calculator if you need to, or else just change it in your head. 7/10 is 0.7. 25% is a quarter, so it's asking you to shade a quarter of that shape. And if 43% is shaded, 57% must be unshaded. Okay, the cheapest price, sorry, the least weight here is the T-pad. Lots of people lost marks here. There are 1,000 grams in a kilogram, so I times by 1,000 to go from kilograms to grams. Kilo anything means 1,000. 137 millimeters. Well, the best way of doing this is to look at your ruler. 137 millimeters is 13.7 centimeters. He wants to buy 6 Praxis tablets at £165 each, so that's £990 in total. So when taken away from 1,000, there will be £10 change. You have to complete both parts of the tally chart here. So a tally chart works by 4 dashes and then a slash across for the 5th, and then the total up the frequency here. The mode is the most common, so which is the most common of the 4 scores on the spinner? 9 is the most common score, it turns up 7 times. What is the range of her scores? So the biggest score you can get is 9, the smallest score you can get is 3, so the spread is 6 marks. And 9 is not a prime number because it divides by 3. Total up the marks on each of the 2 spins, and the table looks like this. How many of them give you an answer of 10? Well, there are 3 ways in which you can get a 10 out of 16 possible different combinations. Total greater than 12, so there's 1, 2, 3 14s, 2 16s and 1 18, so there's 6 possible options out of 16. So what's happening is doubling every time, so the next term will be 32, and if you carry on until the 10th term, carefully counting up, it's 512. 8 sides, so it's an octagon. But if this question had been different in the real exam and it had 7 sides, or 6 or 5, could you have still answered it? Something's a regular pentagon if all the sides and all the angles are the same. In this case they're obviously not. And parallel lines, you can choose any pair of parallel sides. That point is -3, 1. The most common mistake here was people confused the x-axis with the y-axis. This is your mirror line, the x-axis, so it reflects down to here. You must include the units, and it's told you up the top here that these are 1 centimetre grid squares. So the units will be square centimetres for area, and you can either count the squares or just do a half base times height. Remember with the algebra question that the number goes in front and then the letters generally follow in alphabetical order. 5 goes to the other side and becomes a -5. The biggest thing that divides into 15R and into 10 is a 5, so that's what goes outside. When you're timesing, you add the powers. And we do crab's claws here and then just tidy up the x's. angles which meet at a point must add up to 360 degrees. So you know that angle, and that angle, so what's left must make it add up to 360 degrees, which is the answer to those two parts there. Because it tells you in the question, and because of these labels here also repeating that, you know this is an isosceles triangle. So you know that these two angles must be equal. If you've already used up 118 of your 180 degrees, that's where you find out that these must be 31, and then this is a straight line, so if that's 31, Z must be 149. There was a lot of marks lost for not reading the question carefully here. This is 10:15 in the 12-hour clock. In the 24-hour clock, 10 to 4, lots of people just went back to turn this time into the 24-hour clock. 10 to 4 in the afternoon. So 1 o'clock is 13, 2 is 14, 3 is 15, 15 plus 50 minutes, 10 to 4. From 9:30 to 11:15 caused lots of people trouble. 9:30 to 10:30 is 1 hour. So 9:30 through to 11 o'clock is an hour and a half. So 9:30 through to 11:15 is an hour and 3/4, or an hour and 45 minutes. So I've got to convert it from hours and minutes into hours as a fraction. So this is 1 1/45/60 of an hour. So speed is distance over time, 80 kilometers per hour. Again, the biggest mistake here was in misreading the question. 1/6 of the passengers get on at Lisbon, not 1/6 of the people who got on at Southampton. So it's 1/6 of the 1,200 passengers who get on at Lisbon. So in total you've had 1,040 passengers get on at Southampton and Lisbon, which means there are 160 places still in Venice. So start off with 1,200 to 900 and cancel it down as far as you can go. It's got to be in the simplest ratio. Misreading the question was the greatest problem here again. The output is 17. So play around with a few numbers on your calculator until you find what it is that you can put in, times by 4 and take away 7, which will give you 17, and it turns out to be 6. So if you put in the x, times it by 4, and then take away 7, really you should tidy up that algebra by putting the number in front, 4x minus 7. Show you know these always turn up. When you're dividing fractions, you flip the second one upside down, make it a times, and then it's top times top, bottom times bottom. So you know how much vegetable stock it takes for 6 people. There's a variety of ways you could do this question. You could recognise that 24 people is 4 times as many as 6 people, so you're going to need 4 times as much vegetable stock. Or you can do it the way that I've done it. Work out how much you need for 1 person, and then build it up to find how much for 24 people. So you know that for 6 people you need 300 grams, and you want to find out how much you need for 9 people. Sorry, how many people you can feed with 450. Well, 450 is 1.5 times bigger than 300, so you're going to feed 1.5 times more. So that's 9 people. There should be a 6 on top there. 6 out of the total times 360 is 54 degrees. The modal class means the group which is most common. So here's the most common group with 14 people in it, and that group was the 20 to 24 group. This was another question where lots of people lost marks by not reading it carefully. It's asking for the mean, the average, not just the total. So we don't know how many texts these 6 people send. So we do the usual thing, halfway between 0 and 4. If you count up on your fingers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. The middle finger was on the 2, so there's 2 in the middle there, and so on. So if we work out the top row, that tells us the total number of texts sent, which is a common question in itself. But then we divide it by the 40 to get the average. 20 or more text messages, there were 14 people out of the 40 who did that, so 35%. Constructions. If you don't know all the constructions that are in your theory folder and on my video, then you should learn them. When you draw these arcs, they must cross over. They can't just meet at the middle. They must cross over for full marks on this question. So this is asking you to list everything that's in either A or B. So here's the set of B. So in either or, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and 9. The overlap with C is 4 and 5. There's no more overlap, so that means that the other members of C can't possibly come from set A, so any other two numbers would be fine. It's a fairly straightforward algebra question. Multiply out the bracket, move the smallest number of x's where it becomes a plus x, move the plus 15 the other way where it becomes a minus 15, so we've got 7x is minus 11, so x is minus 11 divided by 7, which is minus 1.57. Be aware of the formulas on the formula sheet. The volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h, and that's on the formula sheet for you, so all you had to do is put those numbers into the formula. To the nearest whole number is 1466. Now bounds is the limit of where it could have been before it was rounded. So if it's 5.4 to two significant figures, the next one up to two significant figures would have been 5.5, and the next one down would have been 5.3. So here's our imaginary ruler marked out in one decimal place. We chose 5.4 rather than 5.3. Where do you swap between the two at 5.35? And we chose 5.4 rather than 5.5. Where do you swap between the two at 5.45? That's upper and lower bound. Y equals 2x plus 3 should have been fairly straightforward. You know that that number always tells you the y-axis intercept, so it crosses at 3, and this number always tells you the gradient, so it goes 1 forwards and 2 up. The last part's quite difficult, but it's only worth 2 marks. So you also have in your theory folder how to draw lines like y equals 2 and x equals 3, and then you just shade the area between them. Finally, it's asking you to find an angle, so it's going to be a trigonometry question, not a Pythagoras question. Label up your sides. You don't care about the h, so we can cross out that triangle and that triangle, so we know it's a TOA problem. We're trying to find the angle, so it's a shift tan of O over A, which is 4.5 over 9.6. Read the question carefully. Make sure you get the mark for rounding it to one decimal place.